a newcomer to Meta S that focuses on drawing aggro and countering and reflecting negative ailments back to sender. It is HMN00 Megawan Nyuudo, with the kit of minus guard, provoke, power hammer, tank legs, and the leg ability of Brilliance, which restores a small amount of HP to all parts when charging Metaforce. Now, we actually have seen Megawan Nyuudo relatively recently thanks to the recent chapters of story mode that have been released, so he's not necessarily a brand new face right out of day one, and we have already kind of expected an idea of what he does. But this will be the first official introduction of him as a model that can be pulled. And let's just say that when it comes to being able to draw aggro and counter ailments, he's not only the first of his kind to do so, but also does it pretty well when done correctly. Minus guard on the head part is a defense skill and a brand new skill being introduced to the game as well. Explaining it briefly, minus guard will only trigger when the incoming attack is an ailment-based attack. This can include anything from tornado, to fire, to bug, melt, deathlock, or whatever. If it's an ailment, he's going to intercept it. And not just intercept it either, he's going to reflect it back to sender just like counter or mirror guard, but that also includes the ailment on top of that. So that means that if you plan to try to slap him with Deathlock while in defensive stance, I'm so sorry my guy, but he's going to pull an Uno reverse card on you and you end up with the one on Deathlock and not him. In all other situations or all other intercepted attacks, though, it will serve as a regular basic guard attack, which will simply allow him to intercept blows for allies at the cost of him taking the heat. And of course, as a guard, it can be cancelled or busted with anyone using Destroy or anything that can cancel or negate guards. That, in this case specifically, though, is not an ailment. Right arm of Provoke is a skill we actually have not seen too terribly often in recent, if I'm being completely honest, but it is still a rather interesting skill all the same, in the fact that upon attacking the target, it will inflict them with a taunt status. While inflicted with this taunt status, they are not allowed to select anyone else to target or draw attacks to except the user. In this case, Megawan Nyuudo makes it very clear that whoever he slaps is going to be dealing with only him and no one else, which can be a very solid way to keep damage off of allies and keep it on himself. And given that as tanky as he is, he can definitely tank a hit or two pretty well thanks to this. Power Hammer and his only consistent form of extended damage with his kit as a pure set is a conventional melee skill that is also an AoE, meaning it will damage all parts equally and spread the damage among them. But as a power-based attack, it will also get a times 1.5 damage bonus as long as the user's legs remain intact, at the cost, of course, that you cannot dodge or defend while in cooldown. So do be wary of that weakness as well if you are going to use it. Tank legs means that when it comes to terrain, Megawan Nyuudo honestly does not care what terrain he's fighting on because he's going to be chugging at its own pace no matter which way you look at it. And as expected of tank legs, he is packing some very impressive base stats as well, with the exception, of course, of having the inability to evade. But given the passive 30% damage reduction of tank legs and the very high resist stats at 1899 melee resist and just over 2000 with shoot resist, he's most certainly not going to be going down without a fight. And he can probably take almost any hit his way like it's a love tap more than something meant to actually deal damage. Of course, as tank legs, he also does not have the greatest mobility ever at mid-500s, but again, that is kind of par for the course, and with B rank across all terrains, it is a pretty solid leg you really can't ever go wrong with using. When it comes to armor, he's most certainly packing the bulk as well, with a head armor of almost 5,500, right arm of 4,000, left arm at 4,100, and legs at 4,800, means he's most certainly packing the bulk and the HP, and when you pack his resist stats on top of that, that makes him even harder to break down. In addition to this, on top of it, he also has the Brilliance leg ability, which means when he's not trying to draw aggro to himself or reflect ailments back to a sender, he can also charge Metaforce on his turn to restore just a little bit of HP to all parts. Now, while this isn't something that he can rely on super heavily, it does allow him to a little bit more of extended survivability, which does kind of go towards his overall viability as a pure set, or essentially on any way you choose to use it. This being said, as a pure set score, I still do have to rate him a pretty solid 5.5 out of 10. Primarily for the fact that even though minus guard can be seen as a very nasty skill that you can make use of, Just a friendly reminder that it only counters ailments, and in all other situations, he will just take it as a regular guard. Which also means that if they are packing Destroy on the enemy side, that's basically putting a target on his back that says, shoot me. Because one hit from Destroy and he goes down quicker than you'd really want him to. Provoke and Power Hammer can be seen pretty useful as well, and it does synergize with his very bulky, tanky kit moderately well, as Provoke does allow him to draw aggro to himself, and Power Hammer does give him the ability to deal damage when he's not trying to draw aggro. And the tank legs, of course, heavy bulk does also tie into him pretty well. So as an aggro magnet more than anything, he's not too shabby, but there are still some things to be cautious of if you choose to use him. As mixed parts, I do have to rate him just a little bit higher at about a 6 out of 10, given the fact that because he is also triple heavy, he is definitely packing the weight and naturally is subject to heavy punish from any gravity attribute skill. But that does mean that his legs and his parts can still be put to very good use even as mixed. Tank legs with Brilliance are actually pretty solid, especially with such heavy resist stats like these, as something you can use if you ever are forced to use tank legs, which you will be at some point in the game, whether it be through a super invasion or a specific modifier. It never hurts to have some good tank legs on hand, and his are most certainly going to be one of the far better ones compared to most out there. Provoke, Power Hammer, and Minus Guard also have very good uses as well, but because they are also heavy parts, do exercise some caution if you are going to incorporate them in your team, and of course, especially apply caution if you're going to use Minus Guard, and make sure that the enemy is going to be using ailments before you even consider using this on the team.